Filmmaking Podcast. Filmmaking Technique of Akira Kurosawa. Part 1. The legacy of filmmaking technique left by Akira Kurosawa for subsequent generations of filmmakers has been diverse and of international influence. The legacy of influence has ranged from working methods, influence on style and selection, and adaptation of themes in cinema. Kurosawa's working method was oriented toward extensive involvement with numerous aspects of film production. He was also an effective screenwriter who would work in close contact with his writers very early in the production cycle to ensure high quality in the scripts which would be used for his films. Kurosawa's aesthetic visual sense meant that his attention to cinematography and filming was also demanding and often went beyond the attention which directors would normally expect to use with their cameramen. His reputation as an editor of his own films was consistent throughout his lifetime in his insisting on close participation with any other editors involved in the editing of his films. Throughout his career, Kurosawa worked constantly with people drawn from the same pool of creative technicians, crew members, and actors, popularly known as the Kurosawa Gumi, Kurosawa Group. The style associated with Kurosawa's films are marked by a number of innovations which Kurosawa introduced in his films over the decades. In his films of the 1940s and 1950s, Kurosawa introduced innovative uses of the axial cut and the screen wipe which became part of the standard repertoire of filmmaking for subsequent generations of filmmakers. Kurosawa, and his emphasis on sound-image counterpoint, by all accounts always gave great attention to the soundtracks of his films. Teruyo Nogama's memoir gives many such examples, and he was involved with several of Japan's outstanding composers of his generation including Toru Takemitsu. There are 4 themes which can be associated with Kurosawa's filmmaking technique which recur from his early films to the films he made at the end of his career. These include his interest in a. the master-disciple relationship, b. the heroic champion, c. the close examination of nature and human nature, and d. the cycles of violence. Regarding Kurosawa's reflections on the theme of cycles of violence, these found a beginning with Throne of Blood, 1957, and became nearly an obsession with historical cycles of inexorable savage violence, what Stephen Prince calls the counter-tradition to the committed, heroic mode of Kurosawa's cinema, which Kurosawa would sustain as a thematic interest even toward the end of his career in his last films. Working methods. All biographical sources, as well as the filmmaker's own comments, indicate that Kurosawa was a completely hands-on director, passionately involved in every aspect of the filmmaking process. As one interviewer summarized, he, CO, writes his scripts, oversees the design, rehearses the actors, sets up all the shots and then does the editing. His active participation extended from the initial concept to the editing and scoring of the final product. Script. Kurosawa emphasized time and again that the screenplay was the absolute foundation of a successful film and that, though a mediocre director can sometimes make a passable film out of a good script, even an excellent director can never make a good film out of a bad script. During the post-war period, he began the practice of collaborating with a rotating group of 5 screenwriters, Ajiro Hisayata, Ryuzo Kikushima, Shinobu Hashimoto, Hideo Oganai, and Masato Ide. Whichever members of this group happened to be working on a particular film would gather around a table, often at a hot springs resort, where they would not be distracted by the outside world. Seven Samurai, for example, was written in this fashion. Often they all, except Oganai, who acted as referee, would work on exactly the same pages of the script, and Kurosawa would choose the best written version from the different drafts of each particular scene. This method was adopted so that each contributor might function as a kind of foil, checking the dominance of any one person's point of view. In addition to the actual script, Kurosawa at this stage often produced extensive, fantastically detailed notes to elaborate his vision. For example, for Seven Samurai, he created 6 notebooks with, among many other things, detailed biographies of the samurai, including what they wore and ate, how they walked, talked, and behaved when greeted, and even how each tied his shoes. For the 101 peasant characters in the film, he created a registry consisting of 23 families and instructed the performers playing these roles to live and work as these families for the duration of shooting. For his early films, although they were consistently well photographed, Kurosawa generally used standard lenses and deep focus photography. Beginning with Seven Samurai, 1954, however, Kurosawa's cinematic technique changed drastically with his extensive use of long lens and multiple cameras. The director claimed that he used these lenses and several cameras rolling at once to help the actors, allowing them to be photographed at some distance from the lens, and without any knowledge of which particular camera's image would be utilized in the final cut, making their performances much more natural. In fact, Tatsuya Nakata agreed that the multiple cameras greatly helped his performances with the director. But these changes had a powerful effect as well on the look of the action scenes in that film, particularly the final battle in the rain. Says Stephen Prince, he can use the telephoto lenses to get under the horses, in between their hooves, to plunge us into the chaos of that battle in a visual way that is really quite unprecedented, both in Kurosawa's own work and in the samurai genre as a whole. With The Hidden Fortress, Kurosawa began to utilize the widescreen, anamorphic, process for the first time in his work. These three techniques, long lenses, multiple cameras, and widescreen, were in later works fully exploited, even in sequences with little or no overt action, such as the early scenes of High and Low that take place in the central character's home, in which they are employed to dramatize tensions and power relationships between the characters within a highly confined space. For Throne of Blood, in the scene where Washizu, Mifune, is attacked with arrows by his own men, the director had archers shoot real arrows, hollowed out and running along wires, toward Toshiro Mifune from a distance of about 10 feet, with the actor carefully following chalk marks on the ground to avoid being hit. Some of the arrows missed him by an inch. The actor, who admitted that he was not merely acting terrified in the film, suffered nightmares afterward. For Redbeard, to construct the gate for the clinic set, Kurosawa had his assistants dismantle rotten wood from old sets and then create the prop from scratch with this old wood, so the gate would look properly ravaged by time. For the same film, 4 teacups that appeared in the movie, his crew poured 50 years' worth of tea into the cups so they would appear appropriately stained. For Ran, art director Yoshiro Muriki, constructing the third castle set under the director's supervision, created the stones of that castle by having photographs taken of actual stones from a celebrated castle, then painting styrofoam blocks to exactly resemble those stones and gluing them to the castle wall through a process known as rough stone piling, which required months of work. Later, before shooting the famous scene in which the castle is attacked and set on fire, in order to prevent the styrofoam stones from melting in the heat, the art department coated the surface with 4 layers of cement, then painted the colors of the ancient stones onto the cement. Editing. Kurosawa both directed and edited most of his films, which is nearly unique among prominent filmmakers. Note 1: Kurosawa often remarked that he shot a film simply in order to have material to edit, because the editing of a picture was the most important and creatively interesting part of the process for him. Kurosawa's creative team believed that the director's skill with editing was his greatest talent. Hiroshi Nizu, a longtime production supervisor on his films, said, "Among ourselves, we think that he is Toho's best director, that he is Japan's best scenarist, and that he is the best editor in the world. He is most concerned with the flowing quality which a film must have. The Kurosawa film flows over the cut, as it were." The director's frequent crew member Teruyo Nogama confirms this view. Akira Kurosawa's editing was exceptional, the inimitable work of a genius. No one was a match for him. She claimed that Kurosawa carried in his head all the information about all shots filmed, and if, in the editing room, he asked for a piece of film and she handed him the wrong one, he would immediately recognize the error, though she had taken detailed notes on each shot and he had not. She compared his mind to a computer, which could do with edited segments of film what computers do today. Kurosawa's habitual method was to edit a film daily, bit by bit, during production. This helped particularly when he started using multiple cameras, which resulted in a large amount of film to assemble. I always edit in the evening if we have a fair amount of footage in the can. After watching the rushes, I usually go to the editing room and work. Because of this practice of editing as he went along, the post-production period for a Kurosawa film could be startlingly brief. Yojimbo had its Japanese premiere on April 20, 1961, 4 days after shooting concluded on April 16. Kurosawa Gumi. Throughout his career, Kurosawa worked constantly with people drawn from the same pool of creative technicians, crew members, and actors, popularly known as the Kurosawa Gumi, Kurosawa Group. The following is a partial list of this group, divided by profession. This information is derived from the IMDb pages for Kurosawa's films and Stuart Galbraith IV's filmography. Composers: Fumio Hayasaka, Drunken Angel, Stray Dog, Scandal, Rashomon, The Idiot, Akira, Seven Samurai, Record of a Living Being, Masaru Sato, Throne of Blood, The Lower Depths, The Hidden Fortress, The Bad Sleep Well, Yojimbo, Sanjuro, High and Low, Red Beard, True Take Mitsu, Dodescaden, Ran, Shinichiro Ikebe, Cage Musha, Dreams, Rhapsody in August, Matadeo. Cinematographers: Asakazu Nakai, No Regrets for Our Youth, One Wonderful Sunday, Stray Dog, Akira, Seven Samurai, Record of a Living Being, Throne of Blood, High and Low, Red Beard, Dersu Ozawa, Ran, Kazuo Miyagawa, Rashomon, Yojimbo, No 2 Kazuo Yamazaki, The Lower Depths, The Hidden Fortress, Takaose, Sanjuro, High and Low, Red Beard, Dodescaden, Cage Musha, Ran, Dreams, Rhapsody in August, Matadeo. Art Department: Yoshiro Muriki served as either assistant art director, or production designer for all Kurosawa's films, except for Dersu Ozawa, from Drunken Angel until the end of the director's career. The 1,400 uniforms and suits of armor used for the extras in the film Ran were designed by costume designer Emi Wada and Kurosawa, and were handmade by master tailors over more than 2 years, for which the film won its sole Academy Award. Production crew: Teruyo Nogama served as script supervisor, production manager, associate director, or assistant to the producer on all Kurosawa's films from Rashomon to the end of the director's career. Hiroshi Nizu was production supervisor or unit production manager on all the films from Seven Samurai to Dodescaden, except Sanjuro. After retiring as a director, Ishiro Honda returned more than 30 years later to work again for his friend and former mentor as a directorial advisor, production coordinator, and creative consultant on Kurosawa's last 5 films, Cage Musha, Ran, Dreams, Rhapsody in August and Matadeo. Allegedly one segment of Dreams was actually directed by Honda following Kurosawa's detailed storyboards. Actors: leading actors, Takashi Shimura, 21 films, Toshiro Mifune, 16 films, Susumu Fujita, 8 films, Tatsuya Nakade, 6 films, and Masayuki Mori, 5 films. Supporting performers, in alphabetical order: Minoru Chiaki, Kamatari Fujiwara, Bokyuzan Hidari, Fumiko Hama, Hisashi Igawa, Yunishuke Ito, Kaiko Kagawa, Daisuke Kat, Isao Kimura, Kokyutan Kodo, Akitake Kono, Yoshio Kosugi, Koji Mitsui, Sejima Yagakai, Eiko Miyoshi, Nobuo Nakamura, Akimi Negishi, Denjiro Okochi, Noriko Sengoku, Gen Shimizu, Ichiro Sugai, Haruo Tanaka, Akira Terao, Eiji Tno, Yoshio Tsuchiya, Kichijiro Ueda, Atsushi Watanabe, Isuzu Yamada, Tsutomu Yamazaki and Yoshitaka Zushi. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share.